Hi, I'm Assistant Professor Aditi Mathur, International Schools of Business Management, Suresh Ganvia University, Jaipur. And in today's video lecture, we'll be learning about the indifference curve. This is the concept of an ordinal utility. So let us just start with understanding the introduction of this indifference curve. It was introduced by a Russian economist in 1915. Later on, it was developed by the Higgs and Allen in the year 1928. These economists are of the view that it is wrong to base the theory of consumption on two assumptions, that is, that there is only one commodity which a person will buy at a time and the utility can be measured. So actually, Higgs and Allen challenged the theory which says that only utilities can be measured and one commodity will only be purchased by a person at a one time, right? And which is actually practically not possible. You never go into the market to just buy a one product, or you will not buy a one product from one shop and you won't go for the shopping for the other product in another shop, right? You will generally go and do the bulk buying, or at least buy 2 to 3 more products until and unless it's an emergency or some other situations. But general assumption is always that if you are in a market, you will never buy one product. You will buy more than one product and then you will come back. And your utilities can be measured is also one of the assumptions which was there in the theory of consumption. And these two economists, the Higgs and Allen, they challenged these two basic assumptions which was there in the theory of consumption. Higgs and Allen point of view is that the utility is purely subjective and it is immeasurable. And it is somewhere down the line correct. Like today, if I have a pen, the utility of this red pen is more for me in comparison for this red pen for a student, right? Because for students, the utility of blue ink pen or a black ink pen will be more in comparison to a red ink, because red ink is generally for the professors to check the answer sheets or to give their remarks. So the same thing they are saying, that calculating or measuring utility in numbers is bit not justifiable. You cannot measure the satisfaction, because what is utility? Utility is power of calculating the satisfaction, the power to calculate the satisfaction of the product. So just calculating that in numbers is bit difficult, and it is subjective. Let's take an example that there are two professors, me and Professor X, right? And for me, utility of this red ink pen will be maybe 20, but for another person it might be only 2 or 3, because he or she might have lots and lots of other pens with him or her, right? So again, this comparison is there. It is a subjective. I might give ball pen more preference in comparison to the gel or ink, but it might be possible that Mr. X, the professor, the another professor, he might prefer to have gel or ink in comparison to ball. Again, this concept is there that this point is proved that calculating utility is purely subjective. It cannot be simply calculated, or you cannot always say that yes, I got 10 units of satisfaction from having a cold coffee. You cannot do that. It is immeasurable. And that is what Higgs and Allen, the two economists, tried to prove it in year 1928. So they challenged the assumptions which were given by the theory of consumption. And it is really very important for you students to know that how this theory developed of the indifference curve, right? And what were the two assumptions which were challenged in 1928 by the two economists Higgs and Allen. And because in question and MCQs, these types of questions generally come, so you should be very clear with all these types of facts and figures, that in which year, who were the two economists who given this approach, and what assumptions were challenged. Assumptions were from which theory? It was from theory of consumption. So an individual is interested in a combination of related goods and not in purchase of one commodity at one time. It is true. The statement which is there on your screen is 100% true, and you can also relate that your interest will be to buy combo, to buy a combination of that two related goods. Like generally when you go into the malls and at the time of billing there is a small box type or basket is always there, in which there are also lots of combo items are packed up, right? Maybe of the chips or namkeen, right? It is there, always there. So you generally pick one of them because they are a combination of the related good, which you will like to buy it, or you will see them that it is in a combination. It is comparatively cheap if you just go and buy a single packet, right? And it will be an offer, buy three get one free, or buy two get one free. So that combination you might like it and you will buy, and it is there. It's a human nature, it's a human tendency, because humans or a purchaser are considered to be a rational human, right? They like to be a rational at the time of purchasing, and that is why they are under the category of a rational human being who is there as a customer. So customers generally go, and whenever they do shopping, they like to buy the combination of the related goods only, right? No, and they don't like to buy one product. You will not like to go to a big mall to just buy a pair of jeans, definitely not, or just a one shirt or a t-shirt. No, you will not just go and do the shopping and you will just buy a belt. No, you will not do that, right? You will buy a entire attire, or you will just go and have two to three items at a time. Just going and doing shopping of one item is waste of time, energy, resources and money. And we don't do it because we don't have that much of time, we don't have that much of resources, fuels are also limited. And we always believe that in one day only we will go and do entire shopping, we'll buy all the materials and we'll come back, right? So that is what Higgs and Ellen tried to prove, that the theory of consumption was on the assumption that a person will go into the market and buy only one product. But that is absolutely wrong. He will go and buy more than one product, a bundle of a combination of a products, that too of a related goods, if possible, right? So they base the theory of consumption on the scale of preferences. So Higgs and Allen, given their theory on the basis of a scale of that is a scale of preference, they said that the people will buy the product. No, they will buy more than one product. That is also true, but they will buy on the basis of the scale of preferences, right? And how the scale of preferences is there, how it is calculated, we will understand one by one. But the thing to remember, Higgs and Helen given this theory of their consumption on the scale of preferences. They said that you cannot number them up, you cannot measure the utilities. It is not possible. But yes, their consumption theory is based on the scale of preferences. According to the ordinal theorist, a consumer simply rank or order his preferences, right? He just order all the items, right? So for me, if I am going for a shopping, my preferences will be very clear. What I have to buy at urgent point, right? My highest things will be ranked first. My list will also be prepared like that. The one I need for at higher priority will be there at the top of my list. Then medium priority and the least priority items, right? And I would like to cover my all items in that order only. That order of preference is there in was supported by the ordinal theorist. They said that the consumer simply rank or order his preferences. We also do that, right? Your parents also do that, and you also do when you have a limited amount of pocket money and you have lots and lots of options, whether to go and have a weekend with your friends, or to just be with your family, or to save the money so that you can buy a gift for your mother next month. Whatever, you will rank your preference, and according to that ranking, according to your preference, you will react on that situation. It is also an expression of the customer's preference from one commodity to over the another commodity, right? So my preference will be red ink pen in comparison to blue, and then in comparison to black, right? But for students, it will be blue, black, and red. So this is my preference. And the another one preference order which I said was for the students, right? So a customer will prefer as per their need and will rank the commodities, and they will rank on the basis of the another commodity. So what happens is that they have options, And from those options, from those bundles, I will pick one after the another. So I have three options right now in front of me: blue, red, and green. So my preference will be red, then it will be black, and then it will be blue. But for a student, it will be blue, black, and then red, right? Or if green is there, the green will be least for me. I don't like green ink. I'm not authorized to use the green ink. Green ink is generally for the principals or the heads, right? And student will also not use it. It is not allowed, or it is not, suitable for the students also to use the green ink. So they will also not use that thing. So it will be the least for the both of the parties, but your preference of the other colors will be in that order. So again, you see, I have preferred my goods over the another, and I have my own preference list. My students have my own preference list, and we will not buy one commodity. I will buy just a bundle of that pens, right? And students will also like to buy a combo pen, so maybe that 5 ink one pen which is there, not just one single blue pen or just single red pen. It might be very tedious for you. Generally in the examination, you try to carry things in your hand. You don't like to carry a box or something like that. So you like to have a pen which have both the ink refills which are there in the market right now. So this is based on your ordinal theories, which was given to us, and they support that the preferences is the way to rank the purchase of a commodity. So now let us just have a look on the definitions of an indifference curve. So the two of the economist definition I have shared, let us just discuss them one by one. You should always learn the definitions, bache, because in examinations you should always quote the definition, quote it in the proper format, and whenever you write the definition, please don't change the words, because it's a definition. It will be in inverted commas, so you are not allowed, or you're not authorized to change the words. It has to be in that same way in which that person have stated the definition, right? And then write it was given by this and this person. And this is how you write, or present your definitions in the examination. Always first give your definition, then your understanding, and then the other explanation, whatever the question have asked. So first and the foremost, you should always learn the definition. At least in the economics paper, I always recommend my students to be clear that you have to write a good definition, and you have to state who have stated this definition. Then only you will get the marks, otherwise your marks will be deducted in this format. So if we discuss the first definition, which is there on your screen, it states that an indifference curve is a locus of point, or particularly budgets or combinations of good, each of which yields the same level of total utility, or to which the consumer is indifferent. Right? Let me just go through the second one, and then we will discuss the concept. The second definition states an indifference curve is a locus of point which are geometrically presented of a combination of commodities X and Y, such that the consumer is indifferent among the any of these combinations. Right? So indifference curve is what? It is a curve, or it is a combination of two different goods which are giving you same level of utilities, right? They are giving you same level of satisfaction. Right? So how it is given and how you calculated what is indifference curve, let us discuss them one by one. Before that, let us just discuss few of the assumptions related with the indifference curve. So now we know that indifference curve is a what? It is a curve in which different combos of goods are there, right? And in that each combos, or each ratio of X and Y, you have same level of satisfaction, right? So maybe it can be a combination of your blue pen and red pen. We are taking that same example, and that combination of blue and red at each level on that curve, that which is graphically presented, is giving me same level of satisfaction. So that curve is your indifference curve. In that curve, in that point, customer is indifferent. He is getting same level of satisfaction at each combination of two products, that is X or Y. It can be anything. Right? And why we are taking two products? It is just because on the graph we can give the presentation of only two products, but not one product, right? Because the old theory stated the consumer will buy only one product, but Higgs and Helen and the another ordinal theorist says that no, it will be more than one product, it will be a combination. That's why. Right. So the first assumption, if we discuss about the assumptions of the indifference curve, is that rational behavior of consumer. It is assumed that the individuals are rational in making decisions from their expenditures on consumer goods. That is true. I have stated you in previous slide. We had the discussion that every rational human being, every rational consumer will make a decisions for expending on goods and services in their whole sense. So our customers for which we are doing the study of indifference will be rational. They will not be absent-minded people. They will not be drunk position, or they will not be in that state of mind in which they cannot take a wise or a sound decision. So our consumer is whole in sense, बोलते हैं ना पूरे होशो हवास में, वो वाला कस्टमर की हम स्टडी कर रहे हैं, that our rational behavior of a consumer is there when we are studying the indifference curve. The second assumption is utility is ordinal. Utility can be expressed ordinally. In other words, a consumer can rank his various combinations of goods according to the satisfaction or utility of each basket. Right? So we have discussed this point that this theory of indifference given by the Higgs and Helen is totally on ordinal theory, in which the satisfaction, the utils are not numbered, they are ranked, they are preferred. Right? And this preference and ranking method is known as your ordinal approach, and our utilities are ordinal. Right? So the third assumption is diminishing marginal rate of substitution. In the indifference curve analysis, the principle of diminishing marginal rate of substitution is assumed. That is true, because to gain more of one, you have to sacrifice the another one, right? Because we are saying that it's a combination. So if I want to increase the consumption of X, I have to decrease the consumption of Y, right? And this is how I will have a balance. And this balance of indifference curve, the curve's shape of indifference curve, is because of this diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Right? We'll discuss this, why this diminishing marginal rate of substitution is there and how it affects the slope of our curve. But just to give you a glimpse that how our curve is made on and why our curve is downward sloping, it is just because it is on the basis of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Our fourth assumption is consistency in choice. The consumer, it is assumed, it is consistent in his behavior during a period of time. For instance, if a consumers prefer combination of A of goods to the combination B of goods, then he will remain consistent in his choice. His preference during the another period of time does not change. So that means for me, my red pen will always be better than in comparison to blue. I will always prefer red over blue. It will not change. It will never be blue over red. So consistency in choice. The fifth assumption is consumer's preference not self-contradictory. A consumer preference are not self-contradictory. It means that if combination A is preferred over combination B, then combination B is preferred over combination C. That means that the combination A is preferred over symbolically, it over expressed if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C also. The simple maths we used to do, that if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, that means that A is also greater than C. That they will never be contradictory. For them, the B will be the, not the priority at the case of A and B. For them, C will not be priority at the case of A and C. Therefore, and the combination of A and C also, the A will be preferred over C. So let's just have a quick recap of this assumption with the help of an example. So let us just assume that we have three choices, A, B, and C, and our choices or our ranking is between, let's say, product X and product Y, right? So it is, so if I say that I always like to have A combination, right, over B when I'm comparing A and B, I like to have A, not B. It is my preference, right? When I say I'm comparing B and C, so I like to have B over C. ठीक है जी? So that means when I'll compare A and C, I will have A more than C. Why? Because I'm not buying, B at this time, and that is why, because of the simple math which we have, that if A is equals to B and B is equals to C, that's why A is equals to C. That same way, our A will be greater than C, right? And this is what is stated in your fifth your assumption, fifth assumption, right? So now let's just discuss the sixth assumption. Sixth assumption states that the goods consumed are substitutable, right? That means the goods which you are going to consume are substitutable. The commodity consumed by the consumer are substitutable. The utility can be measured at the same level by consuming the more of the same goods and less of the another. There are many combinations of the two commodities which are equally preferred by the consumer, and he is indifferent as to which of the two he receives. So that means if I'm having A, then I can substitute the A over B, and that is why I'm having A in comparison to B. Right? So this is your sixth point, that is goods consumed are substitutable. This is how our indifference curve looks like. This is our indifference schedule, which have combinations. Apples and oranges are the comparing items we are comparing over here, right? So we have different combinations. We have 5 combination A, B, C, D, E, in which I am having the comparison of apples over orange. So I am into the market. I am in front of fruit seller, and he have apples and oranges, and have these different combos, right? And these different combos are the points which are giving me same level of satisfaction, right? If I buy A or if I buy E, I'm getting same level of satisfaction, and that is how I have combined my products. So for me, combination A, in which I will buy 1 apple and 22 oranges, right? Then for B combination, I have 2 apples and 14 oranges. C, I have 3 is to 10. D, I have 4 is to 8. And in E, I have 5 is to 7. These are the different combinations of apples and oranges which are giving me same level of satisfaction. So there is no change in the level of satisfaction for me if I buy A, D, E, B or C. They all are same, and they when are they drawn on the graph, and when I will join these all point, right, when I will draw the line from these curve and I'll join these point, this is known as my indifference curve, IC. It is always denoted as IC. This is my indifference curve. At this level, every point, every combination is giving me same level of satisfaction, right? The goods are represented on x-axis and y-axis, and this is how my indifference schedules look like, and indifference curve. So indifference curve schedules definitions can be in this way, that if we want to describe what is indifference schedule, so indifference schedule is a tabular presentation of different combinations of two goods in which the consumer is getting same level of or equal level of satisfaction. Whereas if that combinations of two goods are represented graphically and points or the combinations are joined and drawn a curve, that curve is known as indifference curve, right? So these are the definitions for the indifference schedule and indifference curve. So this is how I have joined, and this is my IC1, that is indifference curve 1. Now let us just have a talk on the marginal rate of substitution, MRS, right? Because if you remember, it was one of our assumption that our marginal rate of substitution in indifference curve will be diminishing. So let us just first discuss what do we mean by marginal rate of substitution, MRS. So your marginal rate of substitution of x for y is represented as MRS xy, is defined as the amount of y the consumer is just willing to give up to get one more unit of x and maintain the same level of satisfaction. So MRS XY is decrease in the consumption of Y, the last one, right? Be very clear. Decrease in the consumption of Y to increase the consumption of X, because we know that I need to have a combo of X and Y. If it is 10 and 20, if I have to increase this X to 12, then I have to reduce it to, let's say, 15, right? So this decrease in Y so that I can increase my X is known as your marginal rate of substitution, right? So this is represented as this minus delta y upon delta x. Delta represents the change, right? So this is what? This is your marginal rate of substitution. That how much unit you are losing of y so that you can gain more of x. Why we are doing so? Because we have to maintain the same level of satisfaction. To maintain that same level of satisfaction and to come up with the different combos, you sacrifice one over the another. If I have to calculate MRS of YX, it will be decrease in consumption of X over increase in consumption of Y, right? It's a vice versa. If you learn one, you will get the another. So this is what is your marginal rate of substitution. So we said that in our indifference curve, we see the diminishing marginal rate of substitution. So let us just come back to that same example which we were learning. That was a combinations of apple and oranges, and we had 5 combinations, that is A, B, C, D, and E. So let us just calculate your MRS. So how you calculate the MRS? It is change of Y over change of X. So it is 8:1, then 4:1, 2:1, and then 1:1. See, this change is decreasing. That's why diminishing rate of MRs, right? If it would have been increasing, if it would have been, right, 8, 9, 10, 1, then it will have been increasing rate of MRS. But we have stated that in our indifference curve, our MRS, that is marginal rate of substitution, is diminishing, and this is how you can prove it that your MRS is diminishing. So as the consumer increases the consumption of apple, then for getting every additional unit of apple, he will give up less and less of oranges. that is 8 is to 1, 4 is to 1, 2 is to 1, 1 is to 1 respectively. This is law of diminishing MRS, right? So this is how we describe the law of diminishing MRS. In examination, if you have a short question to state what do you mean by the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution, give the definition, draw the schedule, calculate the MRS, and then write the conclusion point that as the MRS is diminishing, and this is why, because to get more of every additional unit of apple, less and less unit of oranges are sacrificed, and because of this nature, that less units of oranges are sacrificed to get more units of apples, our MRS is diminishing, and this is known as law of diminishing MRS. So this is how we can represent this law of diminishing MRS on our graph, that same indifference curve graph, right? So this is the MRS shown, right? This changes between the different combination. This slope represents your MRS. So MRS is measured by the slope of the indifference curve. So you can directly use the formulas to calculate the slope, and then you can get your answers of the MRS. Now let us just discuss few of the properties of indifference curve, which is also known as IC. So an indifference curve has negative slope. That means that it slopes downward from left to right, just like our demand curve. So indifference curves are negative. It is downward sloping from left to right. Why? Because of the property of diminishing law of marginal rate of substitution. That is the core reason because of which our slope of indifference curve is downward and negative sloping. And the second property of our indifference curve is that indifference curve is always convex to the origin. See the shape? This shape is known as the convex, and it is convex to the origin. This implies that two goods are imperfect substitutes, and MRS between the two goods decreases as the consumer move along the indifference curve. So these are the two properties. The first one, it is negative slope. The second one, it is convex to the origin. Then let's talk about the convexity. So what do you mean by this term? It means that the well-balanced, bundled or preferenced to bundle that are heavily weighted towards one commodity, extremely bundled. So let us just discuss this with the help of this graph. So I have a graph in front of you, and it represents you the bundle, this point and this point, right? So the middle point are better than the extremes of the 2 point at the higher indifference curve. So middle point is this one, and this is comparatively better in comparison to the extremes point. Why it is that so? Because in this you are getting less of one, right? And in this situation you are getting again less of one. But in the middle situation, you have perfectly weighted, well balanced, well weighted of both the combinations X and Y, right? And that is what is known as convexity. Now let us just discuss the third property of indifference curve. The first two was that it is convex, it is at negative sloping, and now the third one is that they never intersect or become tangent to each other. They are always parallel to each other. They never intersect. Because if they intersect, that means that there are 2 points. That means that there are 2 points in two curves which give same level of satisfaction, which is not possible, because we said that they are, because of the combinations of the different, they are drawn into different curves, and that is why it is parallel to each other. But if we are saying that the point A is common, That means we are saying that the IC1 and IC2 are giving same level of satisfaction. So if they were giving same level of satisfaction, they should have been at the same point. Why there are two curves then? Right? So that is why it never touches each other, or it never intersects each other. They are parallel to each other, because it violates the rule of transitivity. Because on IC1, A is equally preferred to B on IC2, which is not possible, right? So this is transitivity. The individual is indifference between A and B. The individual is indifference between A and C. Transitivity suggests that the individual should be indifference between B and C, right? So but this point is common in both the curves, which is not possible in the case of indifference theory. And that is why the property of IC states that they are never intersecting or tangent to each other. Now let us just discuss the fourth property of IC. And the fourth property of the indifference curve is that the higher the indifference curve represents higher satisfaction. So your IC1 is more in less in comparison to IC2, is less in comparison to IC3, is less in comparison to your IC4, right? So IC4 is the highest level of satisfaction for a particular customer, right? And that is why it is, at the high level. So the highest IC curve represents higher satisfaction. Now questions come, why is that so? So this is because the combination lying on the higher indifference curve contain more of either one or two, that is always preferred over the list. So you can just see it by yourself. Let's take at this point. 8 is to 3, and this one 12 is to 4. So it is 8 is to 3, 12 is to 4. Definitely a 12 is to 4 is more. So it is higher, and it will give you higher level of satisfaction. So the fifth property of IC is that the indifference curve touches neither x-axis nor y-axis. They never touch x-axis or y-axis. Why so? Because if you are saying that there is a combination of two goods, right? The customer never buy one product. They always buy more than one. They always buy in combination. So if you say that it touches your y-axis, that means the commodity one is 0 units. That means he's purchasing only one commodity. So by definition, we are saying that your IC never touches x-axis or y-axis. So they're in between, always in between. They will never touches both the axis of our graph. The sixth property of our indifference is that indifference curve need not to be parallel to each other. It is not always that they will be parallel, but yeah, they somewhere down the line never intersect or touch each other. So they give you that picture of parallel to each other, but they are need not to be always parallel, right? Because of the different MRCs on the different indifference curve. So before we wind up, let us just have a quick recap of what we have all studied. So today we have studied our indifference curve theory given by Hicks and Allen, which is based on your ordinal theories. It was in 1928, right? So Hicks and Allen given that. They given this on the basis of challenging the theory, which was the theory of consumption. The two assumptions were challenged. And then they said that the combinations are only preferred, and the utils will be ranked or preferred instead of measuring in numbers. Then we saw the assumptions. There are 6 assumptions of the indifference curve. We saw the difference curve and the schedule. We understood what do we mean by diminishing marginal rate of substitution. We also understood properties of our indifference curve. So the first one is it is negative slope. Second one is convex. Third one is that the two curves never intersect each other. The fourth property is that they represents the higher IC represents the higher satisfaction. The fifth represents that they both never touches the axes, x-axis and y-axis. They never touch the x-axis, y-axis. And the last property of IC, which we studied, the sixth one, is that the indifference curve need not to be parallel to each other. It is not always that they will be parallel to each other. So now let us just have a quick recap of what we have studied about the indifference curves and the theories with the help of the MCQ questions which I have prepared. So I have a set of 10 MCQ questions with me. So it will help you out to understand the concept better and check your learning of this video. So let us just check how much you have learned with the help of this video. And the first two questions are on your screen. So you have to identify the correct options from the four. Question number three and question number four. Question number five and question number six. Question number seven and question number eight. question number 9 and question number 10, the last two MCQ of this video lecture. So let's just check how much you have scored out of 10. So the correct answers are like this. The question number 1, the correct option is option D. Question 2, the correct option is option C. Question 3, it's A. Question 4, it's C. Question 5, option B is correct. Question 6, option C. Question 7, option B. Question 8, option C. Question 9, option A. And question number 10, option D. So I do hope that you all have scored good scores out of 10 and have understood what we tried to teach you from this video lecture. So thank you everyone for watching this video lecture and have a happy learning.